own the Bahamas more than any black person living here. So what are you going to do to make sure they don't end up owning our island totally? That's the second thing I'm going to ask. And then the third, what are you going to do to move our children from this colonialist education to a more economically sufficient education that prepares them for what the world that they're living in now?
Now that you mentioned that, it bears delving into.
We can need more than an hour.
I know, right? I want to take the show to the next show, right? You come to the Bahamas, right? Well, you've been all over the world. So you come to the Bahamas and you see, okay, there's all these black people, right? And there's white people too, and Asian people.
It's a softer racism here.
Right, yeah, it's imperceptible almost, right?
Yeah,
and so you come here. And so you say,
Sorry.
okay, I'm gonna go check out your parliament because he's the tourist. I don't know where they took you when you came here, right? So you say, okay, let me check out your parliament. Middle of Parliament, it's a huge statue of Queen Victoria, right?
You know, I had to show him.
You showed him?
Victoria,
Yeah.
He saw Columbus, and he saw the new unveiled.
It's something grinding the dust, right?
Yeah.
Right, and I got a problem with all these colonial holdovers, right? And I don't think it serves us. We just had this big national debate about the Westminster system. I think all of that should be burned, right? I think it's all poison. People tell me I'm not a nationalist. I don't recognize my culture and our history and all this. What is your take on all this as you see this going on throughout these
You
Caribbean
can't find a white nation on the planet that has statues of black heroes in its prominent centers of business and politics. Only in black countries do you find white statues. And not only do you find white statues, you find statues of some of the biggest enemies of the African race on display prominently. Symbols are important because symbols actually communicate the direction that those people are going into. So if you have no problem with a statue of Christopher Columbus, you certainly don't have no problem with white people owning your economy.
So you think it's indoctrination?
Oh, without question.
That's what I'm telling you.
Without question.
And we come in, right? We spoke briefly about it, and we come in for some good information about Christopher Columbus, during the Princess of Africans and tour. We can be doing a lot of stuff talking about Columbus and these neo-colonial monuments as well.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. That was about to ask you. You believe it's like a perpetuation of this colonialism that we've gone through all this time. So now it's just this new form, this neo-colonialism.
Neo-colonialism is worse than colonialism.
Yeah.
Because in
It's
colonialism, you know who the enemy is.
Yeah.
You know exactly what they're about. It's clear to you.
Yeah.
But when you don't know who the enemy is, when people who look like you are serving as the gatekeepers, you see, then the system becomes more dangerous because you don't really know who's for you or not. And that's why we go so long without making any progress, because they're selling us hope. Black politicians are selling black people hope without a plan. Black preachers are selling black people hope without a plan. I don't need hope. I need to see a program. You see, it's just like when Barack Obama became president. Hope we can believe in. I don't need hope. I need a plan. If you play sports, you don't hope you're going to beat the other team. You're going to come up with a plan to beat the other team. Yeah. So don't just tell me to vote and have trust and faith in you. I don't need faith. I need faith in your program, but you haven't given me one yet.
But the thing
it's like
about
constant mockery that God will see us through the
thing about
taxes.
Okay,
what is we gonna do though? Like, you'll see us through. What are we gonna do?
But it's accepted in the black community because of the conditioning of yesteryear. It is accepted in the black community simply because we understand. Okay, we've fed you the Bible. We fed you this understanding. We fed you the fact that we believe that faith and work should go hand in hand. But we fed you more faith, and we expect you. How we gonna work? We got it.
Whenever you study invasions of nations, black, white, it doesn't matter where in history, the first institution they always take over is the church.
That's it.
They go to the church before the school. They go to the church before the military, because the preacher is very critical towards maintaining oppression. The preacher's job is to interpret the impression to the victims in such a way that they consider their oppression divinely sanctioned.
That's crazy.
You see, we're struggling in the Bahamas because God made it that way. So because we're struggling, we need to look within, not at the white man, but something's wrong with our faith. We're not paying enough tithes. We're not fasting enough. We're not following Christ enough. And as long as they can give you a religious excuse for white racism, racism will never have to be accountable to the people.
Wow.
The preacher is more dangerous than the politician, because the politician may steal, but the preacher will find a religious excuse to justify the theft.
Here's my thing, right? I'll let that sink in for people for a second.
That's
right?
Let that wash over you.
right? Let that wash over you, right? And here's my thing. And I've been trying to do these shows for about a year, but I have yet to really, I haven't really organized it. I will say no one will come, right? But I look at, and I've talked about this before, and you put it so succinctly, and I look at our community, right? And we got a couple of things. We got a lot of web shops, though not as many, right?
A lot of
web shops with gaming we talked about. But more so than that, we got a lot of liquor stores, right? We got a lot of churches, right? And then we got a lot of fast food, but I ain't getting to that one right now. But,
liquor in church.
Liquor in church.
Just like slavery.
And that's what we got at every corner, particularly in the over the hill, the ghetto areas. Every corner, you got liquor and church, 2, 3, to a corner. So with the church, right? Not even examining the liquor, but with the church, I've been trying to organize this show where church leaders can come and explain to me what benefit, other than being placated in my faith, which I don't need to go to church to get, right? What benefit is the church serving? Because I look at a church, I went to a church last year, right? And the pastor said, hey, our mortgage has been paid off at the church, right? And I'm looking around, and they're asking for donations. And I'm looking around, and I go, but all these other people still have mortgages.
Or renting.
Right? Or don't own a home, right? Or have no prospects for property.
Absolutely.
Or are unemployed. You know what I mean? So, of what purpose does it serve for the church to have no mortgage, to be debt-free, when everyone sitting inside the church is in debt? I never got it, and I was trying to have them explain to me, and why does the church need such prolific wealth in order to function to service people who are so poor?
It is a conflict of interest for the church to invest in helping its members live better lives, because the church is the bastion of the hopeless. And if you make hopeless people hopeful, why do they need you anymore?
We don't need the church no more. And I believe, and I said this the other day, Wednesday, we had this conversation when you gave me the show. I believe that we're having this transition in the conversation. We're having this problem as it relates to this fight that the number guys are getting, simply because the numbers, even if it's deviated hope, the numbers guys, they sell in a different sense of hope. They sell in a different sense of hope.
They sell dreams too, right?
Listen, hope is our industry.
But at least
we sell hope.
But at least they're real about what they're selling.
Yeah.
Right?
They're
at least they admit to what they pushing, right?
They're not deceiving you.
Right. So it ain't that,
There is a chance you may get something.
Right, yeah.
In the church, there's no chance you're going to get anything tangible.
Right, at least then you may eventually get your money back, right?
You just keep praying.
Right.
Yes.
Keep praying.
I had a show on Tuesday, right, where I went into, it was an anonymous letter to the editor, and they said they were an expat and they were leaving. They'd been there for 25 years. They were leaving, and they just listed all the things that are wrong with the Bahamas, a lot of which are due to the leftovers of colonial rule, right? And it was just steeped in this white supremacy, talking about how we're too close to Africa and we emulate too much of Africa. You gotta, if you got a chance. Yeah, and it was just deeply insulting. And it spoke to a lot of things that are going wrong in the Bahamas. Like, it spoke to our education system not being up to par, and that is true, right? It spoke to our infrastructure not being what it should be, and all this is true, right? But at the same time, it was deeply offensive in that it came from such a racist perspective, and yet some people still told me, well, listen to the truth of what he's saying. Listen to what the truth of the letter writer says. And I was saying, I can't get past the racism.
Yeah,
right? Because you clearly, you don't mean me well if you couch everything you say in racism. Because in the black community, we do have a lot of work to do.
We do.
Right? And we do have to hold ourselves accountable. But I think a lot of times we discount when we're being insulted and we're being preyed upon and we're being taken advantage of.
Yeah, but the issue is when you have these white critiques of black nations and how they operate. These white critiques don't go far enough because they never talk about how their own white people and their economically exploitive tactics are at the core of why the black nations cannot function the way that they need to. I bet you they didn't touch on that.
No, we had and this is another one, although I didn't get the racism from this, but, there was an executive of Royal Bank of Canada, which has, had its boot on our neck for many, many, many generations, right? Our financial system is owned by foreign banks.
Absolutely.
All right. Our government bank our reserve bank is the Royal Bank of Canada, right? Wow. That's where our government credit line is, okay? And one of the executives of the bank and I had a whole show about this, he did an address in front of all, and this is why I say you gotta stand up sometime and have some pride, right? He did an address in front of our elite business community and all our business leaders, and told them why they're pulling their banking services away, why they don't feel the need to invest more in the Bahamas. It's because we're dumb, right? And I guess we're like defective black monkeys, you know what I mean? And that we don't educate ourselves, and it costs too much, and they could do business better elsewhere. Yet they make hundreds of millions of dollars a year off of us. And my thing was, and I'm not saying it was racist or whatever, right? It was from a Canadian black guy, but what my thing was, how am I supposed to address this, right? Yes, we have an education problem. Yes, we have a labor cost problem. But how am I supposed to take it when your bank, right, has pillaged and raped, all right, these colonial holdovers for generations? You own billions of dollars worth of notes, right, of the land. You own all our mortgages. You own our government's credit line, right? They just facilitated the government to borrow more money, all right? And how am I supposed to take you seriously when you talk about our problems? I don't feel I can have a conversation with you if you're talking about my faults, if I'm not allowed to talk about yours.
Exactly.
You see?
The conversation is totally imbalanced, but this international banking cartel, this whole banking establishment that the World Bank and the IMF have created, it is so parasitic to African nations. You cannot grow, you cannot improve. They dictate the terms of your economy. They dictate your social programs. They dictate everything. They basically reduce the nation to an employee. The nation exists to serve the financial interests of the banks. And it doesn't make any sense for us because all the resources are under our soil. So how is it that the people who control 75% of the world's most important resources are the ones most in debt to the banks? Because the bank's money, in many cases, isn't backed by any resources. And when it is, most of it is backed by resources that are still under black land ground or resources that were stolen from those black lands.
Oh, my God. You know?
It's heavy stuff.
And this is what I want. This is what I
But you know what we're missing? Courage.
Yes.
Like when people say, well, what? Courage. You have to be willing to tell the UK. You got to be willing to tell the Royal Bank of Canada. You got to be willing to tell Donald Trump we're not doing it anymore. And the reason why it makes it difficult for the Bahamas to do that alone is because it needs to be a collective Caribbean effort. It needs to be a CARICOM effort. Same thing in Africa. It needs to be an African effort. You can't have one nation saying we're going to stand against this and the rest of them saying we're not going to go there because I want to make sure I wake up tomorrow.
Divided. Yeah.
Exactly. They are intimidated. And after they killed Gaddafi, okay, and after they helped overthrow Mugabe, most Caribbean leaders and African leaders know if you don't do what Washington, D.C. wants you to do, you'll be the next Patrice Lumumba. So everyone's afraid. That's in the back of their mind, which is why when we're looking at voting for people, we need to vote for courageous leaders as well, not just intelligent ones and not just visionary ones, but are you willing to die for the liberation of your nation?
Boy, you find that probably in short supply, as I would find.
No, but what about creativity? I don't know whether or not, I think that we've been conditioned so much by yesteryear and this colonialism that we're afraid to tap in what we have, our creativity.
Yes, we do need to think outside the European box.
We got to.
Because all we did when colonialism ended is we picked up the same systems they operated, and we didn't change a thing about the way they operated.
Not one thing.
You just put black faces on top of a white system.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. We need to rethink things. I think we need to rethink capitalism as being the greatest thing since sliced bread, because it's not. Okay, you have what? In the world, you have 20% of the world's population consuming 80% of the resources.
Yeah.
20% of the world, the white folks, okay, are consuming the resources of the black lands, and the people who live in those very soils aren't benefiting from them at all. And then you have these parasitic lending tactics of the IMF and World Bank where they tell you that you can't protect any of your native industries. That's one of the biggest problems we have in the African world. So if you're in the Bahamas and you guys make salt and things like that, you say, well, nobody can bring salt into my nation. We're going to protect the salt industry so we can have some jobs, some tax base, some economy flowing. Well, they're going to tell you you can't protect the salt industry. If we give you this $5 million, every salt company in the UK, every salt company in the US can come in and compete with your salt industry. And because they can sell it cheaper than you can, ultimately what happens to your salt industry within 2 years? Totally sabotaged.
So I wanted to ask you about that because, and I want to circle back to the capitalism thing because there's always someone arguing me about capitalism. I defend capitalism, right? I mean, you show me something different. That's better, right? But let me ask you this. We're having discussions now we may be moving a little too fast for my taste, right? We're having discussions now about moving into the world, acceding to the World Trade Organization, and a lot of people are talking about it. And my take was, it seems like a fait accompli, right? Like the government's doing it, and there's nothing we can do about it. However, I feel as though it's moving too fast without consulting our people as to what it is exactly that we're doing. But what is your take on the WTO and the impact it has on countries like ours?
Well, the World Trade Organization and its two hands, IMF, World Bank, their whole job is to keep Caribbean and African nations in a third world status. Their whole job is to make sure you don't grow. And it tactics is number one, destroying your local economic markets. Okay, that's why you have Caribbean countries importing products that you grow. Why are you bringing in salt if you have your own salt? Because they forced you to let other outside companies compete with your native industries. That's why you go to Nigeria, you're importing Shell and Exxon and Mobil, but you have your own oil and gas because you had to let them come in and compete with the native industry. And as a result of that, they sabotaged it. And then they go to these black leaders. And this is where we need political education. Because guess what? He's actually a better president than me. But the people think I'm a better president. You know why? Because I kept taking out loans every time I needed something. So when he becomes president, he say, listen, we're not going to do what Dr. Umar did. Because our country is getting worse in debt and your great grandkids are going to have to pay this back. So you won't see fancy cars. You won't see this type of food. The minimum wage might have to hold steady for a few years until we get back on our feet. And guess what the people are going to say? We want Dr. Umar back. He's a better president. He's looking at the long term. But I spoiled you. And I did it by taking excessive loans that your children are going to have to pay back. But the people ain't thinking about that. So that the presidents who are actually horrible for the Caribbean end up being the heroes. Because they made life comfortable, but they did it by putting you further in debt.
So we conditioned by the comfort.
Exactly.
We're content with the comfort.
We are content with the comfort, and because we love being comfortable, you can never get change because revolution is anything but comfortable. You must be very inconvenient to be a revolutionary.
Beautiful. All right, let me take a couple of phone calls. People have been trying to call.
Sure.
This tax writer says, I've been trying to say this. Does it sound good because Dr. Umar saying it now? I've been saying it too, you know what I mean? Not everything he said.
And not in such a graceful way.
Right, yeah, no doubt. Let's take a couple of phone calls. Let's go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the revolution. Good afternoon. Are you there? Yes, good afternoon.
$9,000.
All right, appreciate it. Let's go to another phone call. Good afternoon. Welcome to the revolution. Yes, hello. Yeah, we can hear you. You're on air.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Correct. No.
You gotta get rid of Jesus. But you gotta,
Well,
you gotta gain some sense.
Get some more calls, but let Dr. Johnson respond.
You don't have to get rid of the church, but you have to get rid of the parasitic culture in which the church operates. The problem is not the Bible, and the problem is not having Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. The problem is the pimps at the pulpit, Reverend Chicken Wing and Deacon Pork Chop and Pastor Watermelon, who only started that church because it was an easy, non-taxable hustle. We're not talking about the institution as much as the exploiters who run it.
Oh boy, let's go to another phone call.
That's commercial?
Now we gotta go to commercial break. All right, we gotta go to break. We'll be back on the other side. I want to do little through the breaks. I'm trying to go through the breaks.
I was hoping I would slide through.
There you go,
Hey.
Is it here?
Yeah. It's the best way to try to shoot. That's right, gentlemen. Yeah. I think I can get from here. Are you still rolling?
See what that guy was talking about was
Hi,
true,
you
but
want to
the
get the photo
church
too?
here used to function very differently.
Right,
The church
yeah.
here used to function as, remember I spoke to you when I was on the show, and I spoke about Samuel Scriven and Beaton Street, and
Right.
now we have runaway ads with the white people saying, oh, well, I know they write by Samuel Scriven House.
Right.
As soon as you're
It's
empowered,
done, right?
you're
Yeah.
empowered economically, you say, what the hell am I doing with my money?
Right? Because I wanted to talk about and there's so much ground to cover, and we only have so much time, but I want to talk about what we could emulate from other cultures, because I heard you talking before about how what Jewish people teach their children, and I have this this book called the Jewish something like the Jewish success story, the 7 keys to Jewish success, right? And how Jews practice. They say that Jews are 4% of the population, or something like that, but the most wealthy economic group on the planet. You know what I mean? And they talk about how Jews practice group economics and how they buy from each other, they support each other, they lend each other money, they're not usury with it and stuff like that. And so I don't know your personal feelings, but I wanted to kind of get to how we emulate some of that. Yeah. The Amish, they get together, right? They have a big party and they go build a house, right? Over the weekend. Someone donates the wood, someone donates the nails, the carpenter comes, they don't charge each other, etc. They build the house. That's how my grandmother them house.
But not us. Let me tell
My
you
grandmother house
why.
is built in the 30s and it's still standing.
We accept this concept. We accept this idea that, black crap. We accept that. Subconsciously, we expect you to be a nigga.
Right.
We expect that. We expect that. You can't get together.
I agree. You don't get the benefit of the doubt.
Right,
The white man does.
For having a drink.
Right.
For having a drink. Even if we go have a drink, you buy me a bail. You know, I said, no, you know what, I'm hungry. You're like, you gotta go get something yourself. Right? It's simple. It's simple. No one wants to nurture your spirit, your soul, your person.
That's right.
They want to nurture you.
See, but a lot of the European Jewish solidarity happened because of that European persecution they suffered from too. And they like to try blanket it as it's this global thing. And even when you look at the Hebrew Jewish societies that existed in Africa, I always tell people, as Dr. Umar always says, even our intolerance was inherited through neocolonialism and colonialism. Right. Understand? So,
I was telling one of my guys.
Let's come back. We take 1 or 2 calls and then we talk about the.
I'm conditioned for it.
Yeah, so I can stand here.
If you want to. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good, okay.
That would be another show.
oh man.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The Revolution here on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. My name is Juan McCartney, so good to have you with us. I'm sitting here with the venerable Dr. Umar Johnson. He's visiting the Bahamas now, and he is having an event at the University of the Bahamas tomorrow, and it's open to the public. So we're going to talk about that before we go. We've got so much to get into, and the thing I like to do is have difficult conversations, right? If the conversation's easy, then I don't understand why I'm having it. You know what I mean? So I want to have a painful, difficult, I want to learn something, I want to grow from what we're talking about. So let me just kind of broach another topic we're dealing with in Bahamas. And we have a very serious Haitian migration issue in the Bahamas. And so thousands of Haitian nationals flee their poverty. They climb onto wooden sloops, right, and brave, dangerous waters. Many of them every year, drown, perish, from disease, thirst, hunger, all this. And we have a contentious relationship with the Haitian community, all right, because of our constitution, because of a lot of different things. And I wondered if you saw that anywhere else.
Yes,
because they're all black people, yes. And but we have issues with border control, etc.
Yes, the same thing is going on in South Africa, where brothers and sisters come over from Zimbabwe, Malawi, looking for a better life, and then met with violence or ostracism or racism from other black people. Here's my issue. Number one, I can understand why Bahamians would be angry at Haitians who come in, work for less than minimum wage, which keeps native Bahamians from being employed. In essence, you're being used as a strike breaker by white capitalism. Same thing in South Africa. I can understand the anger because we're trying to fight for better jobs and better wages that we'll never get as long as they can hire you sneaking across our border. But what that means is we need to organize and politicize the Haitians so that we can work with them so we're not working against each other. The issue is a lack of organization. They are not the enemy. They can actually be used in a very clever way to help us achieve our goals. But we're so quick to hate on other black folks that we don't even look at the opportunity that lays beyond that conflict that can benefit them and benefit us. It bothers me that we can get so upset for other Africans coming from another country, quote unquote, taking from us. But you ain't got upset at the white folks who've been taken from you for hundreds of years.
Well, and this is an issue that is consistent. I heard my friend Louis Georges, he was talking about how, that conversation now dies down because we're talking about eliminating shanty towns. Mind you, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? I still remain angry about the taxation. I believe is unfair and ill thought out. And I'm not angry about shanty towns, but I just think it's not sensible to have people live in that way. You know what I mean? And so we have to do something. Some people are very extreme with it. I'm not so, but I think it's an issue that has to be resolved. But what can we learn from other cultures? What can we learn from how other people operate? Because
here's the thing. It's no secret to how you build a self-sustaining, successful community. There's no secret. We used to have them. The problem is we don't have the mindset of collective work and responsibility. For every ethnicity in the world, culture is a weapon and a motivating force to everything that they do. With black people, culture is an unmotivating force, and it cannot be used to galvanize because most of us don't want to be black. You understand? So we're constantly trying to run away from who we are, so you can't use your blackness as a central galvanizing tool. So when Chinese come in, the culture becomes the foundation of the economic empire. Every race is trying to build an economic empire. Black people just want participation. How can you catch up when everybody's building power bases and you just want participation? We want inclusion. We don't want independence. And that's why we'll always be dependent on other people.
That's just that's mind-boggling. I mean, you're speaking so much truth, right? How do we go about kind of building a collective, right? And I guess Chris, maybe because you're here and Dr. Umar is going to do his thing. But how do you go about building a collective, and how do you engender, right, black people to one another, particularly because right now we kind of hate on each other. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, we do.
Most, yes, for the most part, right? Yes, so if you see a black person who's doing well, the first thing is they want to say, well, you're not me, you're an other, you're this, you're that. Yep. You know what I mean? Yep. So how do we engender a trust among each other?
Well, we need to understand something. And I hate to say this, but I think it's the stark truth. Only about 20% of our people are of any use for the liberation struggle. And I'm not talking armed conflict. I'm talking political and economic organization and independence. Only about 20% of us are any good. So number one, we got to separate those who mean well from those who don't. I hate to say this, but this is not going to be some utopic struggle where every Bahamian is going to be involved. There may be few of you, and there may be more on the other side chanting for the white folks to continue to exploit because they have so much invested in that reality. But the reason why we hate on each other, the reason why it's so difficult to build a black cultural empire in the Bahamas or anywhere else is because most of us were indoctrinated either by white teachers or white curriculum. When you go through the public school system, and I see this in America, I see it in the Caribbean, I see it in Africa, I see it in the UK, you're basically being transformed into a Negro. They're literally making you into a coon. The purpose of public education in the Bahamas and everywhere else where black people live on this planet is to teach the oppressed children to be loyal to the agenda of the oppressor. If you can show me another purpose of education, I'd like to see it. I'm a principal, I'm a school psychologist, I work in education, been in it over 20 years. The whole purpose of the system is to make Bahamian children sensitive to the needs and agendas of white folks. As long as you have that, we'll never be free. Until you have black education for black Bahamian children, there will never be an independent black Bahamas.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
You know, that's a part of the agenda, what we're doing. You know, that psychological thing, that's the first step.
I had a black teacher in 11th grade. I said this to you before. I said, all right, you better know what you have to know here now. And so when you go on the job for the white man, you can know what this is crazy stuff. This is crazy stuff. And it wasn't like subliminal. She said it straight out. And it never, ever left me. Even right now, I think of it, and I do my best to be able to detach my kids from this understanding.
Right. Let me ask you this before, and we got to get out of here, and I'll let you guys shout out the event. For those who are listening out there who are white, right, or who are, Asian or whatever, should they feel a certain type of way? Do you think?
No, they shouldn't, because they know everything we're saying is true. That's number one. The reason why they will feel some type of way is because power is in use to being held accountable over those they exercise their power against. One of the privileges of white supremacy is never having to be publicly shouted out by black folks. So it's not that they're upset because they're hearing this. They're upset because you're not supposed to be allowed to evaluate them and hold them accountable for their behavior, even in your country. Wow. This is what I would say, though, to well-meaning Chinese and white folks, because they always claim that they want to help. You don't need to join a black organization to help. You know who the culprits are in your race. You know exactly how you guys are exploiting black people. Do the work amongst your own people. You don't need to come amongst mine. The reason they love to come amongst us is they want to play Jesus and Savior. A lot of them have Jesus complexes where they want to come amongst black folk and be that Savior. We don't need you to come amongst us. The problem is on your side of the border. Stay over there and clean out your own house. If you want to help black people, there's no better way than to stay around white people.
How can people hear more of you?
They can follow me on Facebook at Dr. Umar Ifatunde, Ifatunde. Dr. Umar Ifatunde on Facebook. On Instagram and Twitter, it's at Dr. Umar Johnson. If parents need to reach me, issues with their children, Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com, DRUMAR Johnson at yahoo.com. And if they need to call, 844-4 Dr. Umar. And we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. University of the Bahamas, 11 a.m. If you have questions, 242-462-5022. I repeat, 242-462-5022. Tomorrow, University of the Bahamas, Performing Arts Center, doors at 9:45 a.m.
All right. Thank you so much for coming through and having this conversation with us. It's been my pleasure.
Enjoy. Look forward to coming back.
Hey, Chris. Thank you, Chris Davis, for coming through. Got a shout out. You make this happen. You know what I mean? So
you guys are going to get in trouble, right? That was a pretty strong subject matter today.
No, I'm used to trouble, though. It's all good. Chris can tell you.
So I can take it. Usually I'm always talking, but with the elder in the studio, I just say everybody is just watching, just appreciate the moment.
It's been an excellent conversation to have. Like I said, it's been a difficult one, right? And that's the kind of conversation we need to have more of. Because, like you say, right, we too, what is it? What you say? With the comfort? Condition to comfort. You forgot your own tagline. All right?
Condition to comfort.
There we go. We too condition to comfort. So we got to get uncomfortable, right? If we're going to make some hard changes, all right? That's going to do it for the show today. Again, thank you, Dr. Umar Johnson. Check him out tomorrow at UB. Where you guys at? Harry Moore?
Performing Arts Center.
Performing Arts Center. Yeah. Okay.
Doors open 9:45. Showtime is 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Prince of Pan-Africanism will be there. University of the Bahamas Performing Arts Center. Any more questions? Message me at 462-5022. You can get tickets. They're going very fast at Aaron's Brewing Center in the Morning Marathon and support the Black Young Brothers business. And you can go to the Q Club on Marquis Street to pick up your tickets. Again, the number is 462-5022. And also, if you're interested in joining this Pan-African revolution, this shift in consciousness with African Ebube, you could message me at 462-5022, and it's the same number on the flyer. I appreciate you, brother one.
Not a problem, Chris, man. Anytime. Howard, thanks for coming through, my brother.
Happy to be here, man.
You guys have a great weekend. We're going to be
sir.
back on Monday. Go check out Dr. Johnson tomorrow at UB. Take care out there, Bahamas.
All right.